Hey art teachers, welcome to Art with Miss Looney. Thanks for coming today, I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to kind of show you guys the process of how to create frame out of a 10-inch embroidery hoop with the screen printing mesh. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I have right here with me are some needle nose pliers. Usually I wouldn't have these when doing this process. But I'll tell you why in just a little bit. I've got just scissors, I have the screen printing fabric, the mesh, and then I also have just a 10-inch wooden embroidery hoop. The first thing that I like to do is sometimes on these wooden embroidery hoops, there's just like loose little wood fibers. So you can pull them off. I've seen people just get some really light sandpaper and just kind of sandpaper them off. I kind of just like to shake it off a little bit. Go ahead and just put the inside piece down first, and this makes it a lot easier to get the screen started. The mesh, lay that on top. I do have a little bit of some dents in the mesh. This mesh, you have to be super careful with it because if you bend, you might risk like ruining the mesh in a way. Once you put the embroidery hoop on and around it, you're able to kind of stretch it out. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take this outside piece and kind of like make it big enough so I can get it around, okay? Don't worry about the tightness now, it's fine. When you're putting the screen on, you wanna make sure that the mesh is like centered. So you have like equal parts around it, so you have enough space that you can pull and stretch it. And that's really important because if you're left with just a little bit, you kind of risk ripping the mesh and not being able to use it and having to start all over. With this part of the process, I like to just go ahead and just turn the tightness on the embroidery hoop. And one thing that I found with these embroidery hoops, I'll have to give you guys the information later, but these get really hard to twist. And when I've done this project before with Art 1 students in middle school, it wasn't this difficult. So I have the needle nose pliers for this reason. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and twist it all the way till it's pretty tight on there. And then we'll start stretching the fabric to the tightness that we need to have a really nice screen to start printing with. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten this as much as I can. I like to tighten it to almost the end and then kind of mess with the screen and then tighten it some more. So now that that's fine. So in order to stretch your fabric, I like to hold it to where I'm holding the back piece as well. Pull and push the back piece up. And you can see where it's not tight. You can feel it, but also if you check in the light, you can see the ripples on the screen mesh. So you just want to try and pull those out as best as you can. You really want a really nice stretch screen because it's almost like when you're stretching canvas, you don't want a ripply canvas. Like you don't want a ripply foundation. So once you get all those ripples out, you're like good to go. You can also use this to test and teach the children patience as well. All right, so I'm just pulling it. You can just see that the mesh goes down and across. So if I see a ripple down here, I'll just pull this way. But if I see ripples here, I'll just pull this way. So you're just pulling it kind of towards you. And then I reinforce once I pull a little bit because sometimes this inner piece bounces out. So if you just push that through a little bit, it kind of tightens it. Okay, so I can feel just right here, it's a little loose. And typically you will find some looseness in this area only because it's not closed all the way right there. And I'll kind of just feel across. I can feel this area is a little loose. So, I mean, that feels okay. I mean, there's some looseness over here, but, you know, it is an embroidery hoop, so it may not be perfect as long as it's pretty tight in the center. When I did this project with middle school, I can't remember if we had the kids do it, but I feel like older students, maybe even high school students, are totally able to do this. All right, that's pretty good. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, I just take some scissors and I'll just kind of cut the edge around. You want to leave enough just in case you have to go back and reinforce it. All right, so there's the screen. I'm gonna do the very last tightening, and then I'll probably do one more pull. So I'm just doing one more round of tightening. I mean, it looks great, it feels great. I mean, I've got a little dip kind of in this area. Oh my God. Sorry, Jasper likes to make an appearance sometimes on camera. But yeah, so that's kind of step one. Making sure that your screen is pulled tightly. Make sure you're really reinforcing that under piece, because once you push that up, that also helps to tighten as well. And then just cutting off when you think you're pretty much done and leaving just like ample room just in case you have to tighten again for whatever reason it gets loose. You can also, like for students, you can just get like, you know, like a sticky label or just a piece of tape, you know, name and class code. So that's pretty easy. And then when you store them, you want to make sure you do like flat to flat or end to end, whatever. Because you don't want to damage the screen. So make sure you have like a safe place to store them. So you know that this doesn't get damaged or warped in any way, and then you have to like go back and do it. So yeah, step one. Cool. Great. Yay. Okay, the next step of this process is having your image, preferably just like a simple black image. It can be something that you can draw. It can be an image that you print out. But whatever you draw in black, and I just like did a pencil drawing with Sharpie on top, but whatever is black is what you're going to trace over with this stuff that we call drawing fluid, and this is speedball screen printing screen drawing fluid. So whatever is black on my image here is what I'm going to be going over with drawing fluid on my screen. So now that I have my image done, what I need to do now is trace it on my screen. So you want to do the flat side down. What you can do is either tape the image to the underneath of the screen, but then you kind of risk, you know, like the drawing fluid getting smushed on there. But I'm gonna use a micron, so once I wash the screen from the drawing fluid, it won't like smear everywhere. So anyways, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take my pen, I'm just gonna trace right on top of my screen. So every now and then you can just lift up your screen and kind of check your stencil, see if it's cool or not, flip it over, make sure everything's spelled right and looks right. So yeah. Okay, so now that my stencil is done and it is on my screen, the next step I'm gonna do is start applying the drawing fluid. It's blue and it's kind of almost like a gel. It's pretty thick, but you wanna make sure that you are applying it thick, because if you don't, then it may not be as crisp once we remove it from the screen later on. So what you're gonna need to do is kind of just take something to prop it up so it's not laying flat on your table or your surface. I have some straws that I'm gonna use. Make sure that it's not touching my stencil at all. I have water, I have Q-tips, so if you ever like mess anything up, all you have to do is just kind of dip a Q-tip in water and kind of rub it out. But I really like this process because, like, you know, you're kind of painting, you're making your own image. I can be fluid with my drawing fluid. So I just have some brushes here, some round brushes, an 8 and a 3, just for bigger areas, and then smaller details. I might end up getting a smaller one for the letters. All you're going to do is just dip in. You just have to kind of take your time. After I do one layer of the drawing fluid, then I'll go back into like some areas where it looks a little lighter and just apply a little bit more. So the drawing fluid is gonna need about 24 hours to cure and be ready for screen filler to go on top. So just keep that in mind too. Okay, cool. There's my stencil of my really stinky cats, Levi and Jasper. So now we're just gonna let this cure for 24 hours. And then once it's completely dry, we'll run some screen filler over it and then wash it off, and then we'll be left with a stencil, whatever is painted blue. All right, cool. Okay, the next step of our screen process is to go ahead and fill in the areas we don't want to print with this stuff called screen filler. This is just a speedball screen printing screen filler, and you're able to use water-based or mineral spirit-based inks on this type of screen. So the purpose of the screen filler is just to fill up any of these areas that I don't want ink to pass through. So then when we go ahead and we wash off the drawing fluid, we're left with a print. Okay, so you're able to use a paintbrush, or you can use like a cardboard piece, kind of like a squeegee. So I just cut some pieces of cardboard. I'm just gonna go ahead and use this paintbrush. You still need to make sure it's lifted off of your surface. You need to make sure that your screen filler is also mixed very well. And you wanna do some even coats all around your screen. So in the areas on the edge, I'm not gonna worry too much about those because I can just tape those areas off, but you want this dark red color. So what is also pretty cool with the screen filler is if you didn't want to make or use drawing fluid, you could probably make an image with the screen filler, and then whatever you don't fill is what will be printed. So I'm gonna go ahead and let that dry now. So I have another screen here, and what I'm gonna do here is kind of show you just the difference of doing the screen filler with the cardboard piece as opposed to using a paintbrush. Just gonna lay some on here. And this is just like an easier and quicker solution. Just gonna use some cardboard that I just cut and pull it across the screen, just like as if it was a squeegee. I'll rotate it a little bit. To spread out all this extra. So a little bit goes a long way here, y'all. And you will kind of see some of the drawing fluid just kind of like start to spread a little bit. Your print should be fine. It's still jelly and not 100% cured yet. So I do advise that you do give it quite a bit of drying time in order for that to work out really well. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and let these dry for about a day, and then the next step will be to wash off with a light sponge the blue drawing fluid, so then you're left with your print, and then we're so close. We're gonna start printing really soon, you guys.